Hello ladies and gentle ladies, and welcome back to another Minecraft modding tutorial for Forge 1.20. In this tutorial we are going to be covering how we can make a block and add it to the game. And yeah, so let's get started. So the first thing we're going to want to do is come into our init package and create a new class. This would be called, I'm sure you can guess, but BlockInit, just as our item init was for items. This is going to be pretty much exactly the same as our item init. So we're going to once again want a deferred register. So a public static final deferred register. Let me just turn Copilot off. And that will be of type block instead of type item. We'll call that blocks, and that is DeferredRegister.create. And we'll pass in Forge registries.blocks. Then we need to once again pass our mod ID in here. So tutorial mod ID is the constant that we created. And then we just want to create the registry object. So once again, this is exactly the same as it is for items. We're going to do block. We'll call this example underscore block is equal blocks.register. Let's give it our name. So once again, no spaces, no special characters, etc., etc. Just basic A to Z, 0 to 9 underscores and colons, not colons, forward slashes. Those are all the fine characters. I think you can also have dots, but you know, if you're putting characters like that, then I don't know what's going on there. And once again, just same as items, we just want a supplier. Instead of doing a new item, we're going to do new, and you'll see IntelliJ shows us all of the default block classes that we could use here. So we're just going to use a normal block for this tutorial. In the future we'll cover other ones. And inside of here you'll see, just the same as items, we need to give it some properties so it knows how it will function. For example, slipperiness and, you know, other things like hardness, etc., etc. So we're going to do block.properties.of, and then we can do dot, and we can pass it any of these different things here. So for example, one thing you will probably want to do is maybe the map color, right? So the color that it shows up on a map, and that will ask for a map color. So map color dot, and you'll see all of the different map colors. And now I'm just going to do color green because my block is going to be green. Let's just put this on a new line and put these on a new line so we can change some more properties here. We can also do stuff like destroy time, or alternatively you can just do strength. You have strength with a float and a strength with 2 floats. The strength with 2 floats is the hardness, so how long it takes to break basically, and then also the explosion resistance, so how resistant it is to explosives. If we use the single float, that will just put the same value for both. So I'll just do this one. We'll say 5 for the hardness and maybe 17 for the explosion resistance. And then we can give it other properties. I'm not going to go through all of these. You can choose which ones you want. Most of them are fairly obvious. We can actually do something fun now with 1.20. We can specify the instrument that it should play for note blocks. So you can say note block instrument, and you have all these different instruments, and you can also probably create your own. Let's see, what is this? Is it an enum? It's an enum. Can we make our own? It doesn't look like we can, unfortunately, not without a mix-in anyways, which is a bit of a shame, but it is what it is. What else can we do that's just a little bit fun? Maybe, okay, let's talk about a light level, because that's something a little bit more complicated. So when we say a light level, it asks for a toInt function of a block state. So this means that we have a block state, and based on that block state, you can provide an integer, which is the light level. So obviously 0 to 15. So basically to do this, you just do value, which is the block state, and then just give it a number. So 5, for example. I prefer to just name this state though, so we know it's the block state. And obviously you can do something dependent on that state. So you could say state.get value, for example, and if you had state properties, which is something we'll cover in a future tutorial, you could say based on, you know, whether it is on, then you could say 5 or 10, for example. Obviously we don't have that state, so we can just give it something default. I'll say 10 for this one. And since we're going to be covering loot tables, we need to talk about that. So that's not as simple as just a loot table exists. We have to make a loot table for all of our blocks that we want to drop for something. Now I want this block to only be mineable by iron pickaxes or above. So we actually need to give it the property requires correct tool for drops. And that basically means you have to have the correct tool before you can actually mine the block. So that's a very important property that you might want to add. And I believe also you can copy properties here instead of just doing them yourself. So say for example I wanted to copy blocks.anvil, then that would copy the properties from the anvil, and then you can also add additional properties on top of that or overwrite existing ones. If you want to look at the vanilla blocks to see what they all are and their different properties, you just come into this blocks class here and you'll see every single block in the game. So obviously it's going to take a minute to load because there's loads of them, but you can just come through and you can see all of their different properties here, all listed across like this. For example, you can supply like push reactions for pistons. So I could say push reaction dot destroy, right? So if it's pushed by a piston, it destroys the block. A lot of these properties are new for 1.20 because they used to be in something called a material, which would define a lot of these properties, but now they are all just part of the actual block properties, which is great. But that's pretty much it for the code. Once again, as we did with the items, we need to register this deferred register to the event bus. So let's come back into our main class, and just the same with items, we do block init.blocks.register bus. Now, whilst we have registered a block here, the thing is we don't have an item for our block. So a lot of people kind of, when they start, they assume that registering a block means you're registering the item as well. But you've got to remember that a block is completely unrelated to the item. You can have a block without an item. It doesn't have to have an item. Think, for example, let's see, what blocks don't have items in Minecraft? For example, pumpkin stems or melon stems, right? They don't have an item, they're just a block. So we need to register a block item. Now, generally I do this in my block init. However, you can also do this in your item init. I think so that we know it's an item, let's do it in our item init. And I think that'll make a bit more sense, really. So it's really going to be exactly the same as before. registry object, but instead of type item, we're just going to say of type block item. Now, since block item just extends item, we can still register it to this deferred register, and that'll be fine. Now, I'll just call this example underscore block underscore item is equal items dot register example underscore block, and then a supplier of a new block item. Oh, block item. There we go. Let's put that on a new line. And inside of here, you'll see that it requires two parameters. So it first requires the actual block, which is fairly easy to do. We can do block init dot example block. Now, if you try to do that, you'll see we have an error, and that's because it's asking for a block and not a registry object of a block. So you see here, this is a registry object of a block. It's not an actual block. So if you recall, as I talked about last time, these registry objects are effectively a supplier. So it's like a supplier with a string inside of it. So to be able to get the object from the supplier, we just do .get. And then we need to provide the properties like we did before. So just a new item.properties. And I don't think we'll put anything special on that. I might in fact give it a rarity as well, just for funsies. So we'll do a rarity.uncommon. And let's put these, well, let's just put that on a new line, so that if in the future we want to add more properties, we can. And in fact, I'll do that, like that, and then like that. Okay, fantastic. So that's our block item, and that will now automatically be registered. That's our block registered, and that's our block registry added to the bus. Fantastic. So now we can move on to the resources. So let's do the same as we did before. Let's come into our resources inside of our assets mod ID. We can see that in the previous tutorial we created this Blockstates folder for us. So this is what we're going to be using today. So we need to create a new file in here. Now this, once again, same with item, this needs to be the same name as your block. Now we called ours example underscore block.json would be the name. And inside of here, this is fairly simple since we don't have any special block states. We want to first specify the variance, which is an object. And we just want the default variant. So that means it's just an empty string. And that's also going to be an object. Now in here we specify a model, and that will link to our block model that we choose to use for this specific state. So when it is an empty string here, that just means this is the default state of that block. So for example, when I talk about states, I'm talking, for example, let's think, a furnace, for example, right? It has 4 directions that it could be. Those are different states. That's known as a direction property. So that's 4 states: north, south, east, and west. Additionally, it has a property for whether it is on or off. I think it's actually ignited or something is the name of the property, something like that. Oh, lit, there you go, it's called lit. So you have those 2 states as well. So that means you actually have 8 possible different states, since you have the 4 directions and the 2 lit states. So this here is just the default state. We don't have any special properties that we've added, so we just leave it blank. Okay, then inside of the model we say first our mod ID, so mine is tutorial mod, colon, then block, / and then whatever the name of our model would be. So mine is just going to be exactly the same name. I don't want to get it confused with anything else, so we just keep it the exact same name. And that is our block state done. Now a lot of people will move this onto this same line here, because that just keeps it a little bit cleaner. But just to kind of show off more so what's happening here, I'm going to put it on separate lines. So I'll just go through this one more time. First, we are specifying the different block state variants. Now, the only variant we have in our block is the default variant. So because it's default, we leave it blank. Then this variant needs to specify the model property, and we say that this is in our mod ID, block, and example block. So this is referring specifically to assets because it is by default an asset, and then our mod ID, and then it knows it's a model because we're specifying the model property, and it comes inside models and it looks for the folder of block, which we have right here, and then it looks for a file with this name right here, example_block. So let's create that file, example_block.json, and this is in models block. So in here we just want the default model. So first we need to specify, same as we did with items, we need to say what model this parents from. So ours is just going to be a normal block. We don't want anything really special with the model here. So we can say the parent is block/cube_all. Now once again, same as before, generally the recent trend is to prefix this with Minecraft colon, so we'll do that as well just to keep with the trend and consistency with Minecraft. So what is happening, in fact I'll talk about that once we have finished this model. So we need to specify the textures, same as before with the items. Now the texture we're specifying for this model is all, and we're saying that it's equal to tutorial mod, so our mod ID, colon, block, /example_block, so whatever the name of our texture is. Okay, let's just go back through this again and I'll go ahead and explain everything. So first we specified the parent model. This specifies the things such as the different shapes that make up the model, and also the different texture layers that you could have inside of that model. Say for example an anvil or a brewing stand is maybe a better example. A brewing stand has a special model and it has multiple different textures in different places of that model. So you may have in the brewing stand, for example, you may have base, which would specify the base texture, and you may also have something like I don't exactly know what they call it, but it's probably something along the lines of stand, which specifies that texture too. But for us, since we're going to be using cube all, that means it has the same texture for all of the sides of the model, and they won't differ between them. If you wanted a different texture for different sides, you would need to specify a different model here instead of cube all. For that, I would just recommend looking at vanilla models and seeing which ones do that. I'm sure there are vanilla blocks which have different textures on different sides, so just go ahead into your assets in your Minecraft installation, try and find the model you want and see what it parents off of. Then we specify the different textures that will be used inside of this model. So cube all only specifies one texture, and that is the all texture. And we're saying that is a location of tutorial mod. So by default, once again, this is an asset, so it knows it's inside of assets. Then it looks for tutorial mod, our mod ID, and then it looks for block. So it knows that once again, this is a texture, since we're specifying it's the textures. So it looks inside of textures, and then for the folder block, as we've said here, and then it looks for a file example_block. So obviously we then need to actually have that texture. So luckily I already have this to hand, which I've once again stolen from my 1.19.3 tutorial, and that is my texture here. Same as before, this needs to be a power of 2, so 16 by 16 is kind of the recommended size for a texture. Okay, fantastic. So that's pretty much it. But we need to talk about loot tables, and also we need to do some stuff with tags. So let's go ahead. Oh, first let's do our lang. So let's come into here. And in here, all we need to say is block.tutorialmod.example_block. And then we just say example block. Okay, there we go. That's our lang. And also we need to do the model for the item. That's very important too. Think of, for example, sugarcane. It looks like a normal item that places down a block. So it has a different model. So for that, we need to do the item model. Now, luckily, since we're doing just a normal kind of model, we want ours to just look like a block in the hand. We can just do it fairly simply, really. So once again, this needs to be the exact same name as what you called your item in the BlockItem registry. So I just called mine example_block. And this is super simple. So since we're parenting off of our model that we specified here, right, we want this to be the exact same as our block model. We just say parent colon tutorial mod colon block / example_block. And this just means that it will use this model right here for the model of the item. Fantastic. So that's all we need for the assets. Now we need to create some data. So we need to create a data pack. By the way, this is technically a resource pack right here, this assets tutorial mod. This is our mods resource pack. It's not a technical resource pack in the way that you cannot just turn it on or off, but it is a resource pack in the same way that Minecraft has their own resource pack. So we need to create a data pack, which allows us to specify loot tables and tags and things like that. So let's create a new folder or directory inside of our resources, and we're going to call this data, not data. That is a misspelling. Data, there we go. And inside of here, we're going to probably want multiple different directories. We'll start with just our mod ID, so tutorial mod. And inside of here, we're going to want to create a new file, or a new folder, my bad, once again, directory, for loot_tables. Now, obviously, if you don't want your block to drop anything, then you don't need to do this, but I do want my block to drop something, so I need to do this. And in here, we're going to create another folder for blocks, and then create a file for whatever our block is called. So mine was registered as example_block, so we just put that in here. Now, it doesn't actually need to be called your block name, but generally that's just best practice to keep your loot table the same name as your block. So now we actually need to create a loot table. Now, this is luckily fairly simple, since there is a great website known as misode.github.io, and they have a bunch of different generators. If we come to their main page, you can see they have generators for tons of different things. Now, we want a loot table, so we're going to use that, and we're going to give it a preset here. So I'm just going to preset off of something default like Acacia log, and you can also default to 1.20. Now, what we're going to want is we're going to specify our item that we want to drop. So for us, we want to drop tutorial mod : example_block. and you'll see that shows up as this little thing here. I believe you can... I thought there was a way to change the texture so it shows up as it actually is, but apparently not, so that doesn't really matter. I believe you don't actually have to specify the random sequence. You can just leave that blank, and that will use the world seed for your sequence. However, if you wish to specify your own random sequence, you can do that. That's fine, but I'm just going to leave it blank because it doesn't really matter for a block that only drops itself. However, obviously, if you wanted it to maybe drop multiple different items, you could say add another item here, and it drops stone. Maybe it drops 5 stone, and only on a condition of a check that it is raining and not thundering. Right? You can do these different conditions, and Misode makes it really simple to actually do that. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to leave it kind of as the default, and I'm going to copy it. So we can press this copy button down here, and then we can close this. This will obviously be linked in the description, by the way. We can come back into IntelliJ and just paste it in. Now, I'll briefly just go through this. I'm not an expert in loot tables, so I might not have a perfect explanation, but I will try my best to give a rough idea of what's going on here. So we're saying that this loot table's type is just going to be using the block type. We want this to only happen on a block, not on, say, a chest opening or an entity dropping. Then we're going to specify the different pools. So these are the different kind of a pool, I guess. I don't really know a better way to describe this other than what it says. It's pools, so it's the different, basically, things that can drop from it. So on the first pool, which is this object here, we say that this rolls once, and you can optionally supply the bonus rolls for how many times it may roll on a bonus. Now we just set this to 0 because we don't want a bonus roll. Then we specify the entries for these rolls. So our entry will just be the singular entry, so it will always be this, but you could specify multiple entries, and then that means it could pick either this or this, depending on what it rolls as. So our entry here is saying it's a type of item, and this is the name of the item that it will drop, which if we go back into our item net, we can see is what we registered our block item as. We called it example underscore block, prefixed with our mod ID, of course, example block. And we're saying a condition for this pool is that it will survive an explosion. So that's just basically what most blocks do, really. When they drop their loot table, they have a condition that makes sure it survives the explosion. Okay, and that's pretty much it for the loot table. Now, what we will need to do, though, is we'll need to specify some tags for Forge, or more specifically, Minecraft. So let's come back into our resources. Let's create a new directory. This will be inside of data, but this time it will need to be the Minecraft data. So what we're doing here is we're modifying the Minecraft data pack. So inside of here, we're going to want another directory for tags, and then another directory for blocks, and then another directory for mineable. And inside of here, we're going to want a new file, and this will be this file will be called whatever tool you want to be able to be used to mine your block. So I only want my block to be mined by a pickaxe, so I will call this pickaxe.json. Let's say I wanted it to only be mined by a hoe, I would call it hoe.json, etc, etc. You get the point. So I'm going to leave it as pickaxe.json. Now inside of here, this is fairly simple, really. We first create the object as usual. We specify that we don't want to overwrite vanilla, so we say that replace is false. If you set this to true, this will overwrite the vanilla pickaxe JSON. Then you can say the values. Now this is an array, so we use square brackets, and then we can just pass in whatever we want to add to this pickaxe JSON. So we just want to add our block, so we say tutorial mod example underscore block. Fairly simple. Let's say you wanted to add like a vanilla block here, you do Minecraft acacia underscore log, right? It's fairly simple. That's how that works. And you would do the same for any other tools that you wanted to work. You can add multiple tools as well. You don't just have to use, one tool for one block. You could use multiple tools for the same block as well. Then let's create the forge, shall we? So if we create another directory, now this one will be forge /tags /blocks, and that's inside of the data folder, by the way. And in here we can create a file for needs underscore netherite underscore tool.json. Now this means that you would require a level of netherite for this to work. So once again, it's the exact same as kind of the pickaxe JSON, really. So we specify that we don't want to replace vanilla, or in this case we don't want to replace forge, and we specify the values like this. Now this is only because we're doing netherite. However, if we want iron, which we do want iron, in that case we would come into Minecraft tags blocks and create needs iron tool. But for netherite, and I believe gold as well, I believe is the other one, these are forge tags instead. So that's a little bit confusing, but I will show you what I mean. So let's create a new file here in Minecraft /tags /blocks, and inside of there we want needs underscore iron underscore tool.json, and put the same thing in here. So basically this gives you kind of a rough idea of how it works. You have netherite and gold inside of forge tags, and you have iron, diamond, stone, wood inside of the Minecraft tags. I hope that makes sense. If not, I will leave a document in the description that kind of covers this whole tool system and how it works. It will talk about maybe like 1.16 or 1.17, I forget, but don't worry about that because it's exactly the same as it would be in 1.20. That kind of thing hasn't changed. So that's all well and good, and theoretically this should all work now. So what we're going to do is we're going to close these little files here. Now I'm actually going to remove the netherite tool, and as such remove this forge directory because we're not going to need that for now. In the future we'll be adding that back, but not at this current moment. So I'm going to delete that, and I'm just going to leave the iron tool. And I have just realized I've accidentally called it needs iron dot tool, so that's actually not going to work. We need to make it iron underscore tool. It's little typos like that that you need to make sure you don't have, because that will cause it to not work. But from there, let's go ahead and let's run the game. So once again, grab your configuration. If you don't have it, go into Gradle, Forge Gradle runs, run client, double click it, and that will run, and I'll see you in the game. Alright, so we are in the game. Now, I've already tested everything, I just wanted to make sure it worked, but if you do /give at s tutorial mod example block, then you'll see that gives us the block, and you'll see it has the rarity like we specified on the item properties, and if you place it down, you'll see it has a light level. You can see there's a light around there. Just in case you cannot see that, we'll do time set night, and you'll see that has a light level. Now, what else did we do? I think we specified jump or something. What else did we specify? If we have a look in our block init, we can see that we specified a map color, we specified a push reaction, we specified an instrument. So let's go test those. So let's grab a piston, and we'll go ourselves a redstone block. Boom, and boom. You can see that it breaks it. Perfect. That's exactly what it should do, because we said a piston reaction of destroy. And we should also see that if we give ourselves a map, yeah, you can see that area has increased. It's only a little bit darker since we only set it to green, but that does actually work. And the other thing was instrument. So if we grab a note block, there we go. And if we place this down, now I don't have audio turned on, so hopefully that is playing the correct instrument. I'll only find out when I'm editing this. What did we actually set it to? We set it to banjo. So this should be playing a banjo instrument right now. I'm very much hoping this is working, but I'm sure we'll see later. It should do. There's no reason it wouldn't really. And then let's test breaking. So we said it should break with an iron pickaxe or higher. So let's test that with a stone pickaxe. And what it should do is not drop anything. Correct. And I've already tested a diamond shovel to check that that doesn't drop. I'm not going to do it again because it took forever. So we'll just get rid of those. And we should see it does drop with an iron pickaxe, which it does. Fantastic. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you had any problems with this tutorial, be sure to join the Discord, which is linked in the description. It's not just for modding help, of course, we have other stuff going on in there as well. So come join, come and hang out, and get help with any modding issues that you have. That will be linked in the description. And obviously, if you found this tutorial useful or enjoyed it, then please do be sure to smash that like button and subscribe so you know when I release the next one, which will be on creative tabs and getting these items in a creative tab, because it's really annoying to have to give them every single time. And yeah, I'll see you in the next tutorial. Goodbye.